Open up that Crystal Pepsi and get comfortable.
This is Dope Nostalgia.
Check this out. It's episode 87 of Dope Nostalgia. I'm your host, Naomi. My good friends Daniel Schessel and James P. White are my co-hosts on this episode while we talk about some Christian music in the 90s. Our primary focus on this episode is the band Petra, which is one of the original contemporary rock Christian bands of the time. And we're going to give you a little bit more information about Petra right now. Wikipedia moment. Petra is an American music group regarded as a pioneer of the Christian rock and contemporary Christian music genres, and was for many years regarded as the world's most popular Christian rock band. Formed in 1972, the band took its name from the Greek word for rock. Though it disbanded formally in 2006, Incarnations have played reunion shows in the years since and released 2 albums in November 2010 and in November 2017. In 2013, it reformed with new drummer Christian Borneo and recorded a new song titled Holy Is Your Name before going back on tour. With a style initially similar to the Eagles and Lynyrd Skynyrd, Petra's sound evolved into a more energetic, driving rock sound in the early 80s akin to Foreigner, Styx, and Journey. Throughout the 1980s and into the early 1990s, Petra was one of the world's most popular Christian rock bands, with each of its albums during that period selling hundreds of thousands of copies, while the band sold out arenas and regularly placed songs at the top of Christian radio charts. With its lyrics, music, and style, Petra influenced numerous other artists at a time when Christian rock experienced strong opposition from many conservative pastors and churches. In more than 3 decades, the band experienced numerous lineup changes, yet released 20 studio albums, as well as 2 Spanish language and 2 live albums, selling nearly 10 million copies while being nominated for 13 Grammy Awards, winning 4, and winning 10 Dove Awards. Its biggest hit, The Coloring Song, reached the top position on 3 Christian radio charts simultaneously, and at its peak, the band's tours rivaled Amy Grant's in popularity among Christian audiences. Petra was the first rock band inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, and the first Christian band whose memorabilia was included in the Hard Rock Cafe restaurant chain. The band announced its retirement in 2005, launching a farewell tour that was recorded for release on CD and DVD. Petra's 33-year career ended with a performance in the early hours of January 1st, 2006 in Murphy, North Carolina. However, the band has continued to perform sporadically since then. In November 2010, an incarnation of the band's mid-1980s lineup surfaced under the name Classic Petra. It released an album, Back to the Rock, featuring one new song called Too Big to Fail. This was a song taken from Greg X. Volts' 2009 album God Only Knows, Back to the Rock, as well as re-recordings of hits from that era. The band released a companion live CD and DVD in 2011. I want to welcome Dan and James to the show as we talk about Petra and some other Christian contemporary artists in the 90s.
You should come out to Spruce Grove tonight.
I have to host karaoke tonight, too.
You have to host karaoke?
Every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Yep.
And I have to go watch that stupid movie, The Pig, at the Metro.
Oh, really? What's that?
That's it's basically supposed to be like a John Wick version of like basically Nick Cage. Someone steals his pig and he gets revenge by chasing everybody down to get the pig.
Oh, that's good.
That sounds amazing.
That doesn't sound like a horrible time.
No. And you have to go see this?
for midget at the movies.
Oh, geez.
Because it's a Nick Cage movie.
Is it new?
Yeah, like it's not in any other theater. It's just open in Metro.
Oh.
Weird. Yeah, anything in the Metro is kind of an odd, one-off.
But according to Rotten Tomatoes, it's got like 90% critic score.
Really?
They say it's one of his best acting roles.
He's really reaching for one of those Oscars, eh?
Yeah. Reaching for an Oscar for a movie that doesn't make it to the theater.
Oh, those are the best kind. Those are the ones that win the big awards because they're so artistic.
That's right. You got vision.
We're here today to talk about some Christian artists, Christian pop, Christian rock, and the biggest one of all, of course, being Petra, because Petra is also known as the probably the most successful and the world's most popular Christian rock band.
Yeah, because it went from the mid 70s all the way to 2000s.
And you guys both grew up listening to Petra, and that's why I was like, you guys are both good friends of mine. It would be wonderful to talk to you about them. I didn't, it's funny because I went to a Christian school. I did have some obviously exposure to a lot of Christian music, but Petra wasn't being played at my school, and I didn't know much about them.
Well, Petra, when there was a group of people who really didn't like Petra.
Why?
When we were growing up, because they were rock.
Okay.
And rock
was bad.
Rock was bad. Yeah.
And rock was only bad. Like, the reason that my grandparents told me that rock was bad was because the syncopated beats would lead you to do bad things.
Yep. Yeah. And so it was banned. I know Petra was banned at quite a few places. They wouldn't let you play their music.
And the thing is they judge it because of the type of music it is. But if you actually listen to the lyrics of 90% of their songs, they're 100% Christian based. Like they're about their faith, about quoting scripture, all these different things.
Yeah, they were a great band.
That's fantastic.
Did you know the name Petra is Greek for rock?
Yes. Yes. No, I see where you're coming from completely, because like I feel like there was like just some sects of Christianity that frowned upon the rock music, but I was so gravitated to the sound of rock music, I couldn't help myself. I love it. So I had a huge struggle in my teens growing up trying to find my own way with music. I mean, that's why I wasn't even allowed to even have any like secular music, and that's what Christians call popular music.
Yeah.
For those who don't know. I wasn't even allowed to listen to it or have it. So when I finally did, I had to hide it. And I had to hide it from like my grandparents, especially because they were super frowned upon it. Did you guys have that struggle at all in your families or no? Well, I don't think Jimmy did, right?
Mine was actually kind of in reverse. My parents didn't like the fact that I was listening to Christian music. It was like they kind of frowned upon that rather than listening to secular music. So that's where I kind of had a bit of a struggle with my family.
Yeah.
My family went back and forth on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
My dad was never a Christian, but my mom certainly was. And yeah, I know she had some times where we were very solely listening to just only Christian music in the home, and that was all we ever listened to. But I don't think we ever, unless it was like something with a bunch of swears in it, she didn't really care too much what we were listening to.
Yeah. As long as the lyrical content wasn't, I figured if it didn't hinder your walk with God, then it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, she didn't like Metallica that much, though. I remember that.
Yeah, I got mine. The one I had trouble with because I liked Guns N' Roses.
Oh,
that was a little bit of trouble. But my mom was pretty easygoing about everything. She didn't bother her that much. It was more trying to hide things from the grandparents. Yeah, but so Petra, was that like the first rock band that you guys both really got into?
I'd say yes for me, because they not only did they have a lot of rock music, like a lot of catchy tunes, but they had a lot of like remastered hymns and stuff like that as well. Worship music. They had several worship albums that were pretty influential in my growth, I guess you can say.
Yeah, for sure. Petra was definitely, I think when you look back at like just the types of bands that were around during that time, yeah, Petra was pretty much the only one really doing what it was doing for quite some time. And yeah, I mean, you like it was such a great. I love their music. I always have, growing up. So yeah, and like Jimmy was saying, some of their worship albums were just absolutely amazing. So yeah, they were definitely up there for sure.
I suppose it depended where you were able to worship, whether it was something you could listen to with like in fellowship or not with other people. But like, for instance, Jimmy was a youth pastor, assistant youth pastor, right?
Yeah.
So how was Petra accepted by the church you were a part of?
The church had the funny thing about when I was growing up listening to this the Christian music, Petra was the thing. But then when I was helping out at the church, nobody was into Petra. It was old. Like they looked at it as old school. Like they were more into the pop side of Christian music. Like your Michael W. Smith, like Newsboys, DC Talk.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, it wasn't until DC Talk came around that it started to shift around to a lot of pop. And I mean, DC Talk was rock, but Michael W. Smith, those were all huge.
Yeah.
You know, they're the ones, they're what came right after Petra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Petra blew the doors open so that they could exist, really.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know what do you make of Stryper? Because Stryper is also a Christian rock band, but they were more of a metal band.
I never really
got into Stryper.
I feel like they were almost more like they rode a line between mainstream and Christian rock. But it was the same thing where their message was positive and scripture-wise based and such. But I remember we weren't allowed to listen to them because they were too heavy at school. Like people would like sneak in their tapes. We listen to them on someone's Walkman and recess kind of thing.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's also if you think about it, like in the secular music, my parents or their parents, they weren't allowed to listen to Elvis because of his provocative dance moves. You know, and you look at it now, and that's nothing compared to what happens now, right?
Same thing with the Elvis, same thing with the Beatles. Any kind of like thing that drove women into hysteria. Trust me, I went through that with the New Kids stuff because I had to I would bring like Bop magazines to school and hide them. And I'd have them in my backpack to show the girls. It was great. But yeah, like that was a big thing. Is like anything that would make people go hysterical, like the Elvis thing was completely like a no-no.
Or push the boundaries is really what it is. Like they did things that other people didn't do. Like during the Beyond Belief album, when they did that mini movie, it's about 50 minutes about, this guy's, teenager's growth as a Christian. And it's like a musical throughout. Like they have them playing the whole album throughout the movie.
That's so cool. I didn't know about that movie. When did that come out?
Around the same time as Petra did. So that, Beyond Belief, that was about 90.
Oh, cool. So it's kind of right in the time zone of where we're centered in, right? So, but you guys said they started way back in 72.
Yeah, like in mid 80s, Greg X Volts, who was their singer, left. I can't remember the reason behind it, but then John Schlitt joined the band, and that was and then it went from there. And I believe Beyond Belief was their fourth album, as with John as the singer, fourth or fifth.
Oh wow, their past member list is huge.
Yes, like that band definitely went through changes.
Yeah.
Constantly. Not any one of their like members really carried through.
I think the one guy, the guitar player, I think he was Hart. I can't remember his
Bob
name.
Hartman?
Yeah, Bob Hartman. He was one of the original members, and he wrote a lot of their songs.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah, Bob Hartman was there for quite a while, wasn't he?
I've got the wiki pulled up on the side here so that I can find questions and topics here. But a lot of people said that like their early sound was very comparable to the Eagles and Leonard Skinner, like a southern rock almost.
Yeah, kind of, because the way Greg sang, the way he enunciated and everything was very, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then
he definitely had a tone that he had, and not only that, it was very heavy with just your typical instruments like guitar, drums. Like there wasn't really a whole lot of synth or anything mixed in there with those earlier albums.
That kind of evolved later.
That evolved a little bit later for them.
It sounds
but
like
they did change their style. They constantly updated it as they grew.
I was gonna say they sound like a band that really did like change with the sound of the times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They had a long break between 2006 and 2013. That's not too bad. I mean, usually a lot of times bands will break up and get back together like that, you know?
But what happened there is that when they broke up, John Schlitt left. And then in 2013, the original singer came back. So they called it Classic Petra because it had the original singer, Greg Volz.
Yeah, Greg Volz came back.
That's very interesting. Now, when a band like Petra goes on tour, where do they usually play?
I saw them a number of times, and it was at like Christian schools or Bible college. Like I saw them in I think 93. It was the Sleeping Giant tour. And they were at Briarcrest Bible College in Cairnport, Saskatchewan.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you told me a story once about your experience to go see them.
Yeah, it was was really popular. Like we took turns sleeping out in the snow waiting to get our tickets so that we got in, and it was an experience for sure. But also like the whole energy of the crowd and the band was moving. It was exciting and moving at the same time, because whether it was one of their, heavy rock songs or one of their worship tunes, everybody was right into it, and it was pretty cool experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's their stage show like? Is it flashy at all, or?
It's like it's not like a lot of like pyrotechnic, but this was also back in the 90s. But it was like just light shows and just a band doing their thing.
Mhm.
And what kind of Christian rock shows did you get to go to? I know that you were telling me about some youth events that were really cool.
Oh yeah, we used to do YC every year. I was there from right back to when we were doing it in Red Deer. I think it was like 94, 95 is when I started going to those. And every year they would bring in big bands for those. But I mean, I got to see so many just from that.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, we would travel around. Like I would go make trips down to Calgary or wherever a band was coming in, and we would go and watch them, because if it was a Christian band I would say during the 90s and early 2000s, I was going to go see them.
That's
sure.
so cool. For those who don't know, what is YC about?
YC was a youth conference for Alberta. We would meet for a long time. I think it was in Red Deer, and all the youth groups from all over the province would end up coming to this event, and it got quite big. They moved it up to Edmonton. I can't even remember what year it was when we moved up to Edmonton, but it was it became quite the event, and man, it was always a fun time.
What
Tons
kind
of
of
concerts and
what kind of venue was it held in? when it got real
so
big?
it was at the Coliseum.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and they would use the surrounding buildings as well. What was that one building that was there? They changed it now to
Like
the Expo Center.
That was the Agricom.
The Agricom. So they would have the Agricom, and they would have a bunch of shows and things going on in there, and then they'd have the main like speakers and the main concerts in the Coliseum.
Mm.
So it would be kind of an all over the place kind of thing,
That's
and you
really
just went to
cool.
whatever you could make it to.
And like I didn't go to YC, but I went to Youth Quake. That was the one at the Briarcrest Bible College, and they used the whole campus. Like you slept in dorms with other people. You shared rooms with residents that were there. They had lectures. They had activities, like whatever, throughout the entire campus. And then your big events and your big speakers were in the main chapel area, which is huge.
Who's the
Yeah.
example of like one of the big speakers that would come to one of these?
I remember seeing Sam Farina. Just usually it's a pastor who's just made a name for themselves, and so they would come in and they would get those guys, and they would really pump up the crowd. And yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
it was about the same there too. Or they'd have like one of their professors, because it was a Bible college, have one of their most known professor doing the same thing.
Yeah,
Nowadays, maybe
there's
we
always
see,
that big name in Christian culture of who this pastor is, and you're like, oh, I can't believe they got this speaker to come in, and it was a big deal.
I feel like nowadays it would be somebody like Joel Osteen or Rick Warren or somebody like that. Right?
Yeah.
Are they like the most popular pastors in North America?
Yeah.
And they're not televangelists, are they? No.
No, they were never televangelists. They were always just some big name that you'd hear, that could pull in a big crowd.
I like Rick Warren's books.
Yes, me too.
I have one of them, and it's always been quite helpful. And the one phenomenon that's really big in the U.S. that I don't know if it exists in Canada at all is the mega church. Where you're talking about a church that can seat over I think these things can seat over 5,000 to 10,000 people. It's basically an arena.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what those two pastors have in their hometowns. Because are you guys aware of anywhere in Canada where there's a mega church?
The biggest church I've been to in Canada was actually in Winnipeg. and it was the Spring Church, and they hold about 12,000 people in their church.
12,000. But
Yeah.
that makes sense because Winnipeg is like, there's a huge Mennonite population, but I mean, in southern Manitoba, but I don't know if Mennonites would go to what kind of church. I thought they go to their own type of church.
Yeah, but like this is like a Pentecostal type church, the one I'm talking about.
Do you guys remember Central Tabernacle downtown here in Edmonton?
Yes.
It was the big pyramid church. That's where the singing Christmas tree was every year.
Yeah. Yeah, we went to that a few times.
That was
they used to have like good choirs and stuff like that would be there.
Yeah.
They had some pretty good acoustics in there.
But since this is like a 90s podcast, Beyond Belief was the 1990 release. And this was the one that James is talking about, having the movie behind it and everything. It was a pretty big deal, hey?
Yeah, it was. And like in the movie itself, they actually show them live. Like they were doing a mission trip, and I think somewhere in South America, and Petra was there, part of this mission trip in the movie, and it really was a real thing that happened, where they actually were there, and the members of the band were, telling their testimonies and stuff like that. It really did happen,
wow.
not just filmed in this show.
Oh, that's amazing. Was the singles title off that album were Creed, Love, and Prayer, which made me also think of and I Am the Rock, but it also made me think of the band Creed for a second, because I wonder if the band Creed might have been named after that song, or just
what that song is the song itself, and probably the band is probably named after what they wrote the song about. The song is about the Apostles' Creed. So it basically adapts the Apostles' Creed into a song. And I bet you the band Creed took the name from Creed. Because go
ahead.
Like the Creed, like the Apostles' Creed starts out with, I believe in God the Father, maker of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only son. And it's basically the whole song is that. And that's like the basis of Christian faith is kind of wrapped into into the Creed.
It sounds like it's very similar to just like having a prayer for salvation.
Kind of, yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that Creed was originally, I don't know if they were originally secular, but a lot of people said that they were a Christian rock band at one point.
Yeah, they did. I think they always tried to play it off as no, we weren't, because they wanted to stay in that mainstream grouping.
Yep.
Because as soon as you're labeled a Christian band,
then you're not putting normal record stores as much, or touring the same. And
exactly, there was a stigma of, well, Christian music is not as good as
which is
mainstream music.
absolutely not true.
No, but they look at Christian, but they look at Christian music as you're trying to preach in a different way.
Yeah,
is how it ends up getting labeled.
I don't know if Petra was ever one that really crossed over in any way to mainstream audiences, because a lot of people I ask who I have mentioned them have not heard of them. I would say one of the first to do that was probably Amy Grant.
Yes, I think she was probably one of the first to do that.
Now, I was a big Amy Grant fan, with her first few albums. Lead Me On was my favorite album by her, and that was probably late 80s, 89, something like that. And then she comes out with the album Heart in Motion, it just celebrated its 30-year anniversary this year. So 1991's Heart in Motion. A lot of people were up in arms about it in the church, because they were like, how dare she try to cross over? Why is she going secular? And a lot of people frowned on her about that. But I thought it was still just because there's some love songs on there, there's nothing wrong with love songs, in my opinion. They weren't dirty in any way, or and I thought her doing that opened the door as well for a lot of Christian artists. Like Michael W. Smith was able to release that song "A Place in This World," and it charted on mainstream like Billboard.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about that when that was happening?
I was a fan of Amy Grant back during those days, and when I'd listen to that music, and then it would be on the radio in my parents' car because it was on normal, being played on the normal channels, was kind of cool.
Yeah, you always you're like you have your, see, for a Christian, you have these songs that you can constantly listen to, and you have all this music that you're always listening, and you're like, man, these guys are great, and you're trying to tell other people, like, the actual music is actually pretty darn good, and it's not always all preachy, but and then you get a whole bunch of people saying no, we don't want to listen to this, and then all of a sudden one of those songs just kind of like pops onto the charts, and you're like, see, like,
yeah,
this is not that bad, is it?
Oh, here's an example. Jars of Clay for Flood.
Oh, Flood. Oh,
yes.
That was a big hit on mainstream radio, but it's a song. It's a Christian song. It's not even like.
It's not even hiding the fact that it's a Christian song.
Yeah.
It's a yeah, and it hit big time on the. And I remember seeing Jars of Clay at YC one year.
That's cool. That's very cool. I know there's quite a few bands that have had mainstream success that were started as Christians. One of the ones that people get confused about, though, is a lot of people said that Evanescence was a Christian band, but they actually never were. For some reason, they got labeled as such. And that's something that they've been interviewed about constantly, and they've been like, we don't know why that happened, but it did. I like Evanescence's music, so I was kind of like, yeah, that's cool. But no, apparently they aren't.
This test of your faith will last as long as it takes to pass. Do you have no more doubt you'll endure? And your faith will emerge true and pure. No doubt it'll be alright. With God it'll all work together for good. No doubt in the end it will be understood. No doubt it'll all work out. With faith he can move any mountain for us. No doubt in the power of Jesus. And after all is done, we find out all we really need to have is no doubt. After these messages, we'll be right back.
We're going to dance and have some fun.
Hey friends, you know what I really love doing is podcasting. It's so much fun, and I've been so lucky because I've talked to amazing people so far doing this show. And I'm trying to bring you guys the very best content I can. Now, in doing that, it does get kind of expensive, and I'm on a little bit of a budget to do so. But there's a way you guys can help out, and it's called Patreon. If you visit our Patreon page, you can subscribe to our podcast and get all kinds of ultimate perks just for subscribers. There's different tiered levels, so you can join for only $1 a month if you like. What's in it for you? Bonus content. We'll give you a shout out on the show. We're going to be recording all kinds of super secret stuff just for our Patreon subscribers. And in doing that, in subscribing, you're going to help us pay the bills. Help me pay my phone bill when I'm calling people far away for an interview. Help us pay for our licensing fees so we can play you awesome music clips and so much more to help keep this boat afloat. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/dope nostalgia.
Love music? Who doesn't? Who and what were the albums and artists that really turned you onto music?
The ones that made you really stop and listen.
The ones that shaped your tastes and opened your horizons. That's what we want to talk about.
Dig deep into your vinyl, CDs, or even stream away.
Let's listen and learn all about what made you fall in love with music in the first place.
This is Learning to Listen.
So good.
Okay, interesting take. Could you read it like a human being, or?
That's exactly the way a human would read that.
Take two.
The ones that, I don't know, shaped your tastes and opened your horizons, you know? That's what we want to talk about, you know?
You know?
Dig deep into your vinyl, CDs, or even stream away.
Join Quinn, Charlie, and myself, Naomi, for a brand new album every single week on L2L, Learning to Listen. Found everywhere great podcasts are served.
Baby with the hippest dried food around. Chunky but funky, we can lay it down. Cool is the rule, cause the music's so fine.
You might have heard about us through the old grapevine.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. We're not grooves or jades. Yeah.
No ordinary grades.
We're the purple, we're the blue. And don't forget about the sweet golden stew. The California razor, amazing razor. California raisin band. When the blazing sun is gazing at the California raisins, we can lock it in the pocket, come on, raisin, let's rock it.
I've been listening to their album, the 40th anniversary album, quite a bit lately. It wasn't obviously it's not a perfect representation, but it does do a pretty good, I say, a pretty good job of going through.
It showed
the
it,
decades.
like I know which album you're talking about, and it does show the difference between the earlier of the band to the later, and then
Yes,
to
it
the
gives you
more-
a good idea of this is how they sounded in the early days, and then you can kind of go through it, and it's like, oh, I see the how it evolves. And as you get through that album, by the time you're at the end, you're like, oh, this song at the beginning and the song at the end are way different, and you can see how far they've come as a band by
like
the time you're done.
even
I like that.
even when the classic Petra came out, like the newer one where
Yeah.
it had Greg X Volts, that was different from back when he was the band back then. He changed his style a bit too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just him bringing back the old.
Who's your favorite of the two singers?
I have to say John Schlitt is mine,
Yeah.
because
He did the
'Cause those-
majority of it?
No.
as I said, from the mid 80s till 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So about I think it was 2080, 85-ish.
Okay.
And then he went to 2005. So he did the majority, like he didn't do all of it, but he did he was probably the most known to
Yeah.
somewhat of my generation, because Greg Volts was kind of before I even started listening to Christian music.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Greg Volts kind of was the tail end of when I started listening.
Mm-hmm.
And then John Schlitt was the one who he was the one who carried the band from that point, pretty much from the 90s or late 80s, mid 80s.
Are they a band that when you got into them, when you discovered them at the time you did, that you went back into the back catalog to hear some of the older stuff, or did you just kind of?
Oh yeah, we had tapes of old Petra.
Oh, yeah, me
in our
too.
house. Yeah,
Oh, 100%.
and we would always have them on. It's just like if any one of us with old records, right? Like you'd have like old Elvis records kicking around, you'd listen to them, right? And
You'd still have your favorites, but you'd still listen to the what made them who they
Yes.
are.
One of the things like I found interesting here was I noticed when I was listening to some Petra earlier, the song God Gave Rock and Roll to You
Mm.
is a song that they actually recorded. And the funny thing is that I discovered that song from where a lot of people did, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure 2.
Yeah.
And Kiss performed it.
Yes, yes.
Oh, and Kiss was a big no-no in Christian school.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
They told me that stood for Knights in Satan's Service, which Kiss
Yeah.
have denied.
But also when I was going to school, Alice Cooper was looked at the same way, and that he was the devil's messenger, and he's the most devout Christian there was in the rock world, but he just did his music. He did secular music, but he was
I was wondering if he was always Christian throughout, or if it was a recent development.
I know it was not at the beginning, but I know there was something that happened that kind of just drove him to, take the faith.
Nice.
I really do like the history of that song though. Because the band Argent in 1973 is the one who actually came up with that song. God Gave Rock and Roll to You, and Petra covered it in 1977.
Yeah.
But they changed the lyrics. They changed a few of the lyrics in the song, kind of made it their own. And then when Kiss covered it in 1991, it was also changed again, slightly in order to for their band as well. So I mean, it's a cool song, right?
I love it. And
it's a great song.
I had some struggle with it because when it came out, because I loved it so much, but I was kind of wondering if it was bad, because a lot of people would be like, no, why would God give rock to you if it's bad? But I see what Petra's trying to say is it's not bad. This is something it's another blessing in life.
Yeah.
To enjoy rock music.
Yeah.
But I thought that was cool that they had that. And then along with other worship songs, I wonder like how many of the different worship songs that they have performed that are really popular or really popular back in chapel and school, and probably quite a few.
Like there was quite a few of the songs in Petra Praise 2 that we used to sing in church.
I was just looking at that album because it was they got nominated for a Grammy for that album for Best Pop Contemporary Gospel Album. But not only that, they had featured guest vocals from Lou Gramm from Foreigner on that album.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was interesting.
That was Petra Praise 2 one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that came out in 96. Yeah, that's right. Or 97, sorry.
Here's a quote from Schlitt asking about the band's success. He says, I would say from my gut that we are probably as low as we're going to go in that valley and headed for the next peak. That's fine with me because everybody needs a turn. We've been at the top of the mountain twice already. And if nothing else, we need to get out of the way and let other bands have some fun. I mean, now there's variety that Christian kids can have. And they don't just grab Petra. Now they can get Jars of Clay, DC Talk, or Newsboys. Interesting.
Again, it goes back to the fact that when they were doing what they were doing, they were the only ones doing it. And they were the only ones doing it for so long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was no one really out there to compete with them in any meaningful way until roughly around the 90s when other bands started, popping up.
Even then, I don't remember a rock-centered band. It was like you guys said earlier, it was a lot of pop music. And even DC Talk, I guess, would be considered pop rock, but I thought they were weren't they more like hip-hop?
They were very hip-hoppy.
They became hip-hoppy. They started off, I think, rock, though.
Okay. So they were just trying to find their footing on what kind of genre they wanted to be?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a lot about DC Talk, but they were huge, right?
They were massive.
Yes.
And what was their hit that made it on the radio?
I'm not sure. Like they
Just
did
Between
Jesus
You and
Freak
Me?
was the Just Between You and Me. That was a big one for them. Yeah, Just Between You and Me.
But Jesus Freak was huge.
Yeah, Jesus Freak was the biggest one for them.
But I think that almost hit didn't that hit the radio too? Like the mainstream?
I'm not
I
sure
don't
if that one
know.
did or not. That one's a harder one to get on the radio just because it says Jesus in it. But
Strange
it
how
was
we live
such
in
a
a world
big
that it's like that.
song for them.
Isn't it? It's really sad that we live in a world that's like that. That they can't coexist that with main music. It's crazy. They in the year 2000, Petra was the first Christian rock band to be inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame. That would be a huge event.
Yeah.
Because that means
Yeah.
that's kind of like the accepting.
Yeah, like we're
the final
finally accepting that rock music there's a place in it in the Christian world.
And a lot of churches now are full bands like with drum kits and everything, right? Worship music in most, at least like I go to a church in the city, or I was before the pandemic anyway, called Celebration. And yeah, they have like the worship service is full band.
Oh yeah.
And the music's very current sounding.
There's
like
a
pop
lot
radio.
of churches that you'll go to nowadays. They have full band sound, and it's pretty good worship music. If you go on any given Sunday, the music is great. There are still the odd one here and there you'll find that will not allow a drum kit in there in the service, right?
Yeah, I can imagine that.
And a guitar, like an electric guitar.
No distortion.
Yeah, no distortion.
I like it because I mean it's nice to find a church where I could find music that I could really enjoy. And like I'm a Christian. I'm still a Christian, always will be, obviously. But then like I go to this church called Celebration, and I'm listening to the worship music, and I have this thing where I get so like moved by it that my eyes start leaking, like I'm crying, and I'm trying not to be because I'm looking around and I don't see other people doing it. So I get all embarrassed about it, but this lady just like turns to me and she just smiles at me and holds my hand, and I'm like I get like ugly crying during. So I love the worship music, but I have a hard time holding my face together. It's embarrassing.
There are some songs like that, like in worship music, that used to move me too, where you get emotional, or you get quiet, or you get focused or whatever.
And I think that's what it's part of the whole experience. It's meant to move you.
Yeah. Inspire.
Yeah. There's some really good music out there that just move you in a way that is like no other, right? Amazing Grace still gets me, and that song is like flipping old.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I still love that song. That song comes up, if you sing it the right way, still what an impact it can have.
But also with this song like Amazing Grace, though, if you know the story behind the man who wrote it, it moves even more.
Yeah, like there's always something else too, right? Like, so yeah, Christian music I grew up on it. There's a special place in my heart for it. Like I said, I went to so many like YCs and got to see so many different bands and so many different. I was exposed to a lot of that side of the music industry, and and even though it didn't always make it out into the mainstream, it still will always have a special place in my heart. And I'll always enjoy that music. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. What about you, Jimmy? Do you still throw on Petra?
Oh, yes. When I'm, oddly enough, like when I'm struggling, when things seem uncertain, when, I do, and it helps me kind of get grounded to where I was when I first started listening to that music, and back to when my faith was new, and remembering what kept me in it, I guess. So yeah, like when stuff is uncertain, sometimes I throw it on, or watch that Petra mini movie, or watch the music videos or things like that, and just remind me of who I was, where I was, and where I've come from.
That's a cool thing about music too, is that when you listen to certain songs, not only can they help you through certain times, but they also the memories that take you back to places where you were. They always
Yeah.
seem to do that. And I think that's a really interesting phenomenon. It's like you feel like you were there all over again. The brain is pretty crazy.
Like every time I hear the song Beyond Belief, I remember at youth group, me and my best friend Kyle, we did a lip sync concert version of that song, and we were dancing on stage, and we had a fan with a trampoline in front of it with a bag of flour on it, and I jumped onto the bag of flour. It just went everywhere. And that was kind of what we kind of did it. We were trying to do it like pyrotechnics, but we used flour. And
awesome.
And we spent, him and I spent 3 days cleaning up the room that we were doing it in, because it was in the one of the worship rooms in the basement. So yeah, we spent a lot of time cleaning that up, and
But totally worth it.
oh, it was 100% worth it.
That sounds amazing.
This is one of the nice things about this band, like its name is The Rock, and really like this kind of worship music and everything they were about. It really does give you that. There's something about it that gives you that strength when you're going through hard times, and and kind of like points you to the direction of Jesus. So I love this band, even though I don't know much about them until you guys explained them to me today. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for having us on. This was great.
This is cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. A huge thank you to Dan and to James for being my special guests this week and talking about a beautiful band with an amazing message. And we focused on a whole show on Christian music, which was really cool. And as a listener, if you ever have any questions about Christian music or Christianity, you can always contact us and we'll be happy to have a chat anytime. Next week, our special guest on the show is Canadian rock metal queen Lee Aaron, one of my very favorite big female rocker influences. So it was an absolute joy to talk to her. And I can't wait till next week to tell you all about Lee Aaron's new album. And until then, everyone take care.
Hey kids, put down that Tamagotchi and listen for a second. You know, you can follow us on Twitter at NostalgiaDope, Instagram at dope_nostalgia. Visit our website at www.dopenostalgia.com or pick up the phone and call us at 780-851-8785.
This podcast is licensed by SOCAN because we believe that artists should be paid for their work.